Hi. Thank you so much for having me. This is joyous. So first of all, I should say I have to ask you I have to beg your indulgence because, as Joe said, this is a new project for me, and this is the first time I've spoken about it. I'm used to doing projects for about 3-4 years, by which point I have the patter down pat. I don't for this one, and I'm still working out how best to talk about it. So I may occasionally need my notes. So I'm very sorry about that. Yes, I'm an artist. I collaborate with scientists. I'm broadly interested in how science and technology are necessitating a reimagining of our kind of physical boundaries. And what I mean by that is our bodies. So I think that new science and technology like stem cell technology, personalized medicine, augmentation, transplantation are making our bodies into kind of liminal spaces. So these technologies allow us to do things like grow bits of ourselves outside of ourselves, take bits of other people and put them inside ourselves, take bits of technology and add them to our bodies, take our bodies and add them to bits of technology. And I think that makes our bodies really extraordinary sites for transformation, sites for hybridization, and for what is in all intents and purposes, magic. I think that part of those processes mean that our bodies, questionably, no longer actually belong to us. And we become co-created, and we become reimagined. So these are the main questions that I'm interested in as an artist. What is a human body? Can we define it? And really, should we even try to define it? Is that even going to be a relevant question in 5, 10, 30 years' time? So in pursuit of asking these questions, as I said, I've collaborated with scientists, and I tend to collaborate with scientific institutions or one scientist who's running a group. And over the course of those collaborations, I've been working on a series of pieces that I've kind of loosely grouping together and calling corpus. So this is a series of pieces that I've been making over the last 6 years. I'll give you a little bit of a rundown of the first 2 bits of corpus, and then we can get into the exciting part 3, which is what I'm really here to talk to you about. So the first piece of corpus was called Ergo Sum. And in this project, I was interested in personalized medicine and stem cell technology and how it allowed you to grow bits of you outside of yourself. So I thought I would try and grow a second self, a kind of synecdoche, if you like, that would live in the gallery in my place. And that I would do that using stem cell technology, and that I would choose the parts that were kind of symbolically human. So I chose brain cells that actually fire off to each other, blood vessels, and also heart cells. And this is them actually beating when you look at them down a microscope, which is a real Frankenstein moment. This thing that you have grown that has never been inside your body, but is genetically 100% you, and it beats when you look at it. So that was Ergo Sum. The next project in corpus is called Et in Arcadia Ego. And for this project, I was interested in kind of flipping Ergo Sum in a way. And I was interested in how new science and technology, I think, can ask some really interesting existential questions, some really deep existential questions that artists have been asking for a very, very long time. And in this case, I wanted to think about mortality. And specifically, I wanted to think about the nature of cancer and create a space which we could talk about cancer, perhaps in new and different ways. So what I did was I worked with a really extraordinary scientist in the Netherlands called Hans Clevers, and we grew a gut cancer. So I grew my own tumor. So this is, we started off with a healthy colony of my gut cells, which of course had to be harvested. So my running joke is that this is a very intimate self-portrait. And we grew this tumour. And then I would sit with it in the gallery space. And I would perform with it, and I invited people to come and talk to me. And we had these very intense, obviously, discussions about cancer. I mean, there isn't a person who is alive that hasn't in some way been touched by cancer. So that was very fruitful. It felt very meaningful. And then I exhibited my cancer in a kind of secondary, it was a kind of installation in 2 parts. And I exhibited it in a mirrored box. So when you looked inside, it was kind of infinite replications on all sides. So broadly, these pieces and this body of work corpus is trying to place the body kind of between states. So it is disrupting the site of the body. It is mutating the contents, and it is trying to confront something, whether that be the prospect of immortality by growing all these bits outside of you, or the prospect of mortality by growing your own cancer. But what these first 2 parts of corpus are doing is really, you're taking an existing science and you're decontextualizing it. And through that process of decontextualization, through that process of making it happen to my body, or putting it in a gallery, or putting it in a set, you're hoping to reveal something about its meaning, not its scientific meaning, its broader cultural, social meaning, but also its emotional meaning. So the third part of corpus in Posse, which I'm here to talk to you about, is a bit of a departure for me. Because rather than recontextualizing an existing technology, what I'm doing with them in Posse is actually trying to create new science and new technology. I am collaborating with a really extraordinary scientist, and I'm going to have to read her name because it's long, Professor Susana Chuva de Souzel Lopez. We will be calling her Professor Lopez from now on, in Leiden, at the Leiden University Medical Center, at Capalizia Gallery, which is a gallery with a lab in Ljubljana. And we are trying to disrupt the site of gender within my body. The piece is called In Posse, as I've said, and we're attempting to make female semen. So, throughout history, semen has been revered as a magical substance, one of the magical substances. You could think of blood and semen and, I don't know, brain. And it's been seen within our predominantly patriarchal societies as both a literal and a symbolic totem of potency. Patriarchal societies have described semen in various ways, and I'm going to give you a few. So, life force, substance of the soul, drop of the brain, probably quite apt, divine, equal to 10 drops of blood, and this is my favorite from the Pre-Raphaelites. Semen is that which sows the seeds of virtue in the female soul. Shall we sit with that? Shall I repeat that? That which sows the seeds of virtue in the female soul. So, In Posse aims to rewrite that cultural narrative. Myself and Professor Lopez want to use art and science to disrupt that hierarchy and to confront patriarchy. In Posse is being developed in 3 parts. So there are kind of 3 strands which I'm going to try and break apart for you. The first strand is growing spermatoza. Now those are the cells. So those are the kind of wiggly little tadpoles that when I say sperm is probably what you're thinking about. And we are trying to grow those cells from my body. Strand 1. Strand 2 is developing a female form of seminal plasma. Now, seminal plasma is the liquid part of semen, the goo, the spunk, the cum, the bit that kind of carries, the ejaculation, basically, that carries those little spermatozas. And then the third strand is the kind of creative contextualization. So as I said, I'm interested in semen as a symbolic substance. I'm interested in a woman making semen as a piece of activism. And to do that, I want to place semen in a kind of historical narrative. So my contextualization of this project, the way that I want to exhibit it, the way that I'm going to perform with it, is as a reenactment of an ancient Greek festival called the Sesame Forea. I'm going to come back to this. Okay, let's start with strand 1. This is Professor Lopez. She's extraordinary. She's slightly crazy in a really good way. And we are collaborating together. So within this part of the project, we are trying to grow the spermatoza. And we're doing that using these guys. So this is actually a colony of my stem cells. You can see it's a bit like continents, isn't it? And the kind of paler continents are colonies of my stem cells. Stem cells are the cells in your body that can change into any other type of cell. In the past, the only place that you could get these cells was from a fetus. That is no longer the case. About 10 or 15 years ago, Japanese scientists won the Nobel Prize with technology that allows you to make stem cells from adult cells. It's an extraordinary technology that I could talk to you about for a whole 20 minutes on itself, so I won't. But just to say, we are taking adult cells from my body, kind of persuading them to go back in time to how they were when I was a fetus, and using those stem cells for this project. Now, when you are Okay, I'm going to start using terms like male and female, and I'm referring to the kind of phenotypical type male and female. And I would like you to imagine every time I say male and female that I'm putting it in giant inverted commas, okay? So if you're a male fetus, you grow all of the apparatus for making sperm, in the womb. So we know that a stem cell can turn into a cell that makes sperm, and that is effectively what we're trying to do. However, my stem cells won't do that, because at the moment, my stem cells have XX chromosomes. So this is the chromosomal marker, if you like, of what is phenotypically female. The chromosomal marker of what is phenotypically male is XY. These are my chromosomes, which are incredibly beautiful, I think. This is where, one of the first things we had to do, and actually this was really exciting, is Susanna said, so we just need to check that you're XX. And I thought, this could be a really easy project if we find out that actually I'm XY. But no, I am XX. These are my chromosomes just organized a bit, and as you can see, there are 2 X's there, there's no Y. So one of the first things that we're going to have to do in this project is get rid of one of those X's. It inhibits sperm production completely, the second X. And we're going to add just a little bit of the Y. It's a gene that's called the SRY, S-R-Y, and it's responsible for things like testosterone, hair, muscle development. There's a lot of kind of stereotypically masculine, again, big inverted commas, things come from the Y. So once we've done this, once we've gender changed, mutated, transformed my stem cells, we will then just try and coax them into turning into the cells that become the cells that make sperm. And this was a first attempt. I should say, this part of the project is completely new science. Susanna has just received a big grant to do this. It's €1.5 million to try and do this, but it's a 5-year grant, and we are at the beginning. So these guys, these are my stem cells. This was like a first attempt to just see if we could get them to start differentiating into primordial germ cells. That's kind of early stage sex cells. These are just at the very, very beginning, and actually this experiment didn't work. Okay, seminal plasma. The goo. This bit's kind of the more arty bit. So this is the fluid part of semen, and I'm interested in making a kind of artificial version of this. You can just buy it, but obviously it's come from male donors, so that didn't really feel appropriate. scientists in the past have tried to make artificial versions of seminal plasma with varying degrees of success. So we started looking at their recipes and we thought, okay, this could work. So it's, various different chemicals which abstractly make up seminal plasma in the wild, if you like. Things like fructose, lactic acid, cellulose. But one of the big components of seminal plasma is protein. And in previous iterations of making artificial seminal plasma, scientists have used something called bovine serum, which comes from the blood of cows. And I just didn't really want the first female sperm to come from cows, or partly from cows. It's not like a hybrid animal-human project. Also, they might have been male cows, which I didn't really want either. So the obvious thing to do here was to use my own blood. And so this is what we did. And it's actually a very easy process. You just find a willing nurse, get her to take your blood, and it naturally splits if you just leave it. It splits. The red blood cells coagulate down into the bottom of the test tube. You'll see that in a little bit. And the blood plasma, sorry to anyone who's a little bit squeamish, the blood plasma collects at the top. And you can just pipette it off. And it has the lovely effect that it kind of makes the end seminal plasma quite peachy, which is really nice. However, when we were doing this, I kind of thought, okay, yeah, that's the plasma. I thought, well, this is a process that it doesn't just have to be me, right? And obviously within the history and the rich and beautiful history of feminist art making, a lot of artists have tried to do things which help to reject hierarchies. And hierarchies within art making have been very gendered in the past. So to try and make work in a more collaborative, inclusive fashion. And so I decided that it wouldn't just be my seminal plasma that we would use, but rather the seminal plasma from 13 different women, so witches' coven, and that this would make it collaborative. This would be a collaborative act, a piece of defiance that we could do together. And instead of it being our woman's sperm, it would be women's sperm, which I like. And obviously this opens up the opportunity for me to do this with multiple different groups of women, which I'm going to get into. Okay, last strand, last spurt, if you like. No, that doesn't work, does it? Okay, we're working on it. Is this kind of contextualization of the project. Trying to place it within history. Trying to ask questions like, what would the world have been like if it hadn't been run by patriarchal societies throughout our couple of hundred years of human history? And I've become a bit obsessed with this festival. So it's the Festival of Forea. The biggest festival in the whole of ancient Greece in terms of number of people who participated and the actual area, the kind of geographical area that it took place. It's nearly completely undocumented because it was women only. Men were forbidden from knowing about the rites or the rituals. So I'm imagining that when I present this project in its various different forms, it will be presented in the context of a reimagining or reenactment of the festival of Forea. And at the center of those rituals will be this female sperm. And part of that will be a ritual which involves multiple women giving blood in order to make this seminal plasma. So in terms of what I know about what this festival might be like, the first thing I should say is that I think the idea is that I do this with multiple groups of women, and those groups of women really create the festival with me, different every time we do it. However, there are some elements that we know of from the little documentation of the Forea that exist. And we might try and bring those elements in. So one thing that seems to occur in everybody's account of the Forea is that they buried a pig. They buried a pig, and they dug it back up again. The time interval between the burying and the digging up and why the pig was involved, not known. But this is apparently what they did. I should say the festival of Sesame Forea was in honor of Demeter and Persephone, so it was a fertility festival. So we think that maybe you dig the pig up and you spread it on the field, and that's a kind of fertilizer, possibly. But then the pig might also symbolize Persephone, who goes into the underworld. Not sure. Anyway, I was recently in Greece researching this and trying to think about what this festival might be. In fact, I literally just got back from Greece. So these are rather, unfortunately, unprocessed photos and a few images from kind of where my brain is with what this festival might be. So yes, pig burial on a farm in Greece. And just thinking about rituals and enjoying swimming. So continuing on from this, I have a series of exhibitions that are planned in for the autumn. The sperm is not going to be ready, but it will be at a point in its evolution. So I will exhibit this progressively, and each time, hopefully, those little sperm cells will be moving closer and closer to being actual sperm. After this autumn, my plan is that I go to Greece and do a kind of big, all bells and whistles version of this festival. And maybe there are 13 of us in the sea. This is a lovely beach, which is next to some ancient monuments. And maybe we are bringing all of our sperm there, and maybe we're burying a pig together, and maybe it's something else, and maybe we're there for like 2 weeks, and perhaps it's not so much a performance, but it's just something that we do. And connected to that, I've been working with a beautiful filmmaker called Molly Milton, who's just there, and we're thinking about making a documentary about this together. And that documentary hopefully will become another iteration of the project. Okay, I think I've probably vomited the inside of my head on you enough. So all that is left to say is thank you so much, and thank you very much.
Well, that was fantastic. Thank you, Charlotte, and apologies for my kind as well. So, no, we have about 5 minutes or so if we have any questions for Charlotte. And there's a roving microphone as well. So, yep, at the back left.
Hello, thank you very much. Your project is fascinating. I've got quite a sort of literal brain, and so I was wondering if you could help talk me through why having female sperm fucks the patriarchy. Like, why?
Yeah. I see it as a performative act. So it's about disrupting existing structures and existing hierarchies. And it's about taking something which has symbolically been a symbol of patriarchy and certainly used as a symbol by patriarchy and saying, what happens if I possess this? It's not even really about me using this, right? I mean, there are obvious scientific applications to this technology, which is something Professor Lopez is really interested in. I'm more interested in it as a performative act, a piece of activism that just says, what questions are asked? How is this destabilized if suddenly this thing that has been extraordinarily specifically gendered and used by patriarchal societies as a symbol of power, possessed only by one half, only by men, what happens then if I take it? And it's quite interesting because when I talk to people about it, in the nicest possible sense, a lot of men that I've talked to about it have talked to me about the fact that they find it to be like a castration, like I am taking something away, which obviously I'm not taking anything away. I'm just saying, I might have this too. And I think that tension, why does it feel like a castration, kind of gets at the nub of what I'm trying to kind of poke at and pick at a bit.
That's maybe why I don't get it, because I can't be castrated in that kind of a way. But what about the kind of the female stuff that can't be possessed by the other group? Like what? Those abilities are powerful also, and
they are, but they've never been used as symbols. Like, for instance, they're just simply on a large scale, and there simply aren't the historical touch points of female genital fluids being used in the way that semen has been used as a symbol of power. There are, of course, examples of matriarchies throughout our history, but they are very small and few and far between.
But they're founded upon semen versus no semen. I mean, because matriarchy doesn't necessarily come...
But eggs, for instance.
But it's a cosmological perspective, isn't it, I guess, about where humans come from. And so matriarchies, the personhood comes from the person who grows the baby, whereas patriarchies, it comes from the semen, which I guess is where you're coming from in terms of semen being this kind of
I'm not really
saying
that patriarchy comes from semen. I'm observing that it has been used, but that semen has been used by patriarchy as a symbol of literal as a totem of potency, and a symbol of power. And if we think if we think about now, if we think about what would be like an icon of the internet age, it would probably be pornography, and it would probably be somebody coming in someone's face, be that face a male or a female. And obviously, I mean, we could get into a whole discussion about the problematics of pornography, but certainly, it has been recognized that pornography on the internet has been a pretty bad place for women in general, and people are trying to kind of move that forward. But that's just a contemporary example of semen as this kind of symbol of patriarchal power. And that is what I'm trying to destabilize, ask questions about, deconstruct, protest.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Will it work?
Sorry.
Will it work in a kind of reproductive sense?
Well, that is a really interesting question. So, hopefully, at the end of 5 years, we can prove that we have made what could be functioning semen from me. However, and the ethical implications of using it are a big no-no. So recently, there was a genetically modified baby that was, or twins, I think it was, that was announced had been born in China. The reason why, nearly ubiquitously, the scientific community critiqued that act, even though these babies had been modified in a manner that made them resistant to HIV, was because you don't know, we basically know bugger all about how our genome works. There's huge swathes of it that don't seem to do anything but are still there. And you don't know whether just changing that one gene might have an implication when you're 30, right? And if you allow a child to be born with that genetic modification, A, the child can't consent, it's not been born yet, and B, you don't know, you can't test it until you've done it for the first time, untested. You might have tested it on a mouse, but a mouse is not human. So ethically, it is incredibly difficult to do anything where you are genetically modifying something that turns into a baby. And this really would fall into that category. So that is really scientifically, and it's quite interesting this, when we think about feminism and what it does and how, I'm a real believer that feminism is as good for men as it is for women. And what the scientific portion of this project will do is teach us a huge amount about male fertility. And that is really where Susanna, Professor Lopez, that's why she got that funding. Because basically you do the opposite in order to understand the flip, if that makes sense. I mean, I would love to say, for me, the hope would be that it could help same-sex couples have children. And obviously, if you can do it for a woman making sperm, you can have a man making eggs. But we are a long way off having a methodology for genetic engineered children that is ethical. No worries.
If you'd like to join me in giving CJ a warm thank you for that.
Thank you. Good. Thanks, Jeff.